My name is Matt Morton. I am the president of the Community Foundation for Southwest Washington. Thank you for joining us. I'm here with our special guest here in Clark County, Marc Eichenbaum. Thank you. And Marc has spent about 48 hours in Clark County so far this year. And I'm going to ask him a few questions about what he has seen and what are some of the things that he has done in his past that can help contribute to some of the issues that we're experiencing. In fact, one of the most important issues that we'll be covering today is about homelessness in Clark County. We've seen a rise on a regular basis over the last few years, and Marc has something to say about that. So Marc actually works in the mayor's office at the city of Houston and is a leader of a program called The Way Home, and that is Houston's nationally recognized homeless housing initiative. They've done a fantastic job over a little over 10 years, essentially functionally ending homelessness for more than 30,000 people in their community. I think we have something to learn from him, and I have a few questions to ask Marc about that. Marc, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah. So I want to start out. I mentioned that you have been here for about 48 hours. And is this your first time to Clark County, the Pacific Northwest?
You know, I've been to Portland before with my wife, but we never made it north of the river.
Right. It's lovely up here.
It is, and that's an understatement. It's been great, and more important than the natural beauty of the city has been the hospitality. And folks in Clark County have really opened up their hearts and really been wanting to create impact, and have been super nice and accommodating and hospitable to me, and I've really enjoyed my visit.
That's fantastic, and thank you for saying that. And it's so gracious for you to not only say that, but to be here and be willing to share your expertise. So I'm curious, after that 48 hours, what are the things that you have heard that have really risen to the top, have resonated with you? And what would the questions that you might have, or at least the questions that we should be asking ourselves next, knowing that there's a lot of interest in this area and we need to get moving because urgency is key?
It's for sure. So, you know, in Houston in 2011, we had the 6th largest homeless population in the country. On any given night, there was over 8,500 individuals experiencing homelessness. And homelessness was just going up every single year. And the mayor at the time said, why is it going up every single year when we're spending tens of millions of dollars on the issues? And we all believe we should be helping homeless individuals, but we're not moving the needle. So she said, enough is enough. We really want to change how we respond. We really want to be focused on evidence-based, data-driven best practices. And we really need to come together as an entire community on the issue so that we can move the needle. And that started and set forth efforts that have today decreased overall homelessness by more than 60%, including a huge decrease of nearly over 70% of even our street homeless numbers. Now, while we still have homeless in the city of Houston, we've substantially reduced it, and we do feel that we can solve it at the end of the day. I found a lot of similarities where Houston was right before we started our collaborative housing-based system with what's going on in Vancouver. And I found some differences. I mean, the similarities is that work is being done. People care about it. Your elected officials care. Your agencies are working hard. And work is being done, but we're not seeing any reductions in homelessness.
That's right.
And part of that is because of what we're focused on. And are we focused on just serving people and responding to homelessness, or are we really focused on long-term solutions to reduce homelessness? Responding and reducing are two completely different things. Are we lasered focused on working together, putting aside our differences? Because this is too big of an issue to be divided on. It's too big of an issue to be rowing in different directions. The city and the county and the philanthropic world and the private sector and the community and the service agencies all have to be rowing in that same direction to maximize that impact. Homelessness is too big of a crisis with too little available resources not to be rowing together in that same direction. And so people are eager for that change. Work's being done, but you're just not getting the impact that you're looking for. And everybody says something has to change.
That's right.
Something needs to be different. Now, people differ in what needs to change and what we do, but that will to say what's being done right now is not good enough, we need to amplify our efforts, is exactly where Houston was when we started off. Now, the difference is that you guys are already working on housing the homeless. You guys are already working on the data-driven best practice to get people off the streets and reduce homelessness. Okay? Houston was not even there when we started. Okay? You guys have the resources through the state support that comes through the county, through the Affordable Housing Fund that the taxpayers agreed upon that flows through the city, through the federal dollars that go through the city and the county, through even the private dollars that flow through, for instance, the community foundation. The resources are there, but they need to be aligned with each other to maximize that impact. But you guys got the resources. You found the solution, which is housing. You just have to bring that up to a level. You got to bring it to scale to where you can start getting reductions into homelessness.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of differences, but those differences are actually advantages for Vancouver because you're further along than even where Houston was when we were on the cusp of really creating our collaborative system to reduce homelessness.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's good to hear that, and it's inspiring to hear that because we do have a grounding, we do have a foothold. So you identify, and just now we had an opportunity for you to present to a number of elected officials, and you identified a few different things, sort of pillars to this work. A shared vision. You talked about collaboration and resource alignment. You also talked about what does the data tell us, what is the best practice, and the political will and the leadership needed for sort of that's the special ingredients to go into a project like this. I want to focus in on collaboration and sort of intertwining or at least integrating a shared strategy around how we fund things. Because we do, you mentioned sort of all the jurisdictions, the county, which is, you know, everyone sits on top of, you have the city of Vancouver, but then you also have the cities that exist within the county. So how has Houston been able to find a way to coordinate across all of the territories that are represented in your region?
Yeah.
And what was it that sort of helped inspire that coordination? Was there anything specific, or was it a period of time of relationship building that ended up ending in a coordinated system of care?
So the first thing is that within the homeless response system, agencies were not coordinated.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing their own thing, their own way, with their own goals and their own strategies. And what we said was, as a system, let's have a strong lead coordinating agency. And if they're not strong enough, we need to lift them up and get them to a place where they can be that internal leader among all the service agencies to kind of be rowing in that same direction as I spoke about. But then you have the city and county. Now, city and counties across the country are notoriously known for not working together. And historically in Houston, the city and the county never really sees eye to eye on a lot of the issues and respond.
Right.
But I think we figured it out is that they needed one another. The city couldn't respond to homelessness alone. The county couldn't respond to it alone. Government couldn't respond to it alone. We needed the service agencies,
right,
and we needed the private sector, and we needed the ecumenical. Like, it was such a big issue with such little resources. We had to work together if we wanted to move that needle. And so I'll tell you, every single week, I am meeting with the county and with the homeless system. Every single week. We're game planning how many people have been housed that month. What are the obstacles? What are the barriers that need to be overcome? What are the opportunities that we could fund? What are, so we're housing people. What is that having a result at the end of the day on the number of encampments, the number of people? We're holding the homeless system accountable, but first we're giving them the resources that they need. We're figuring out what's the needs of local government, okay? And what's the needs of the homeless system? And where can that common ground be met? It's really important when having collaboration that the folks around that collaborative table aren't holding out to be 100% happy. If everybody, that sounds like Congress, and we know how effective Congress is, okay? So at the end of the day, we're hoping that every agency, every group is about 80% happy. I'm not looking for 100%, but can you swallow it? Are you good? Are you good with it, okay? And if we can get to 80% happy, then we can move the ball down that court. But if we're all looking to be 100% happy, it's never going to happen. We're not going to be able to push the ball, and we're not going to get the reduction. But we had a plan. We sold the plan. We asked folks to try it out, to participate. But then we started with some small proof of concepts. We started with some small pilot programs. And once those pilots showed that they were successful, that cemented that collaboration between all the different entities. That you get folks to dip their toe in the proverbial pool just to try that level of collective impact, but then you have to have that proof of concept to show that it can work and it will work. Even if you're not 100% happy, it's still worth it. And once you have that win, once you have that proof of concept, it's so much easier to cement those relationships, to make collaboration, coordination just part of your muscle memory, to get more entities and more systems to be part of that collaboration. So get those folks you need to, do that proof of concept, and then just bring that collaboration even to scale to have that impact. But I'll tell you this. Not only are we meeting and we're having separate meetings just on the development of supportive housing, development pipeline meetings with all the funders and developers. We have those constant meetings. We're having our housing departments and community service departments are meeting constantly, working with the homeless system. If city has funding that can pay for rent but can't pay for services, and the county has money that can pay for services, not for rent, we're saying, look, we can leverage each other's money to really have that impact. And so we have to braid all the resources of everybody together, come to that table, be willing to be part of that is key. But that collaboration and coordination, there's lots of opportunity and it never ends.
Yeah. And I love how you're phrasing that. It could be seen as a barrier or an opportunity, right? So you mentioned overcoming barriers, and really a two-part question. One is, what was the most significant barrier you think you have figured out in your experience in Houston, and what is the one that remains persistent over time that you continue have to go back to and address?
So Houston mantra is that crises should be turned into opportunities. Okay. So when you're dealing with a crisis, instead of just talking and socializing the crisis, or just crying in a corner because of the crisis, it has to propel action. And it has to be seen as an opportunity to pull together resources, to coalesce that coordination, to try new methods rooted in data to drive that impact. And so the biggest thing that we finally got our head around was that we had to stop investing in short-term Band-Aids that were managing the issue and instead focused on solving the issue. So historically, we were a shelter-based system. We put so much money into shelters, but then we finally had that eureka moment. We were spending all this money to put people in shelters, and they were still homeless at the end of the day. A homeless person in a shelter is still homeless. Okay? So that shelter gets full. It's a containment warehouse. It gets full. And you got to build another one. It gets full. And we weren't getting anybody actually out of homelessness. And the data-proven solution to getting people actually off the streets and completely out of homelessness and out of the shelters out of homelessness is housing with services. And we have permanently housed more than 30,000 individuals over the past decade. 90% of those individuals stay housed for 2 years or longer. It's about housing with services. It takes two to tango here.
Yeah.
The services is what makes the housing successful. It's what keeps the person housed. And the housing, having a safe and stable location, is what makes the services effective.
Yeah.
So they have this inverse relationship. That was our eureka moment. We needed to stop wasting away precious time and resources on Band-Aids and focus on solutions. Now, the biggest issue that we still have is two things, is resources. We don't have the money in Houston. We operate under a voter-imposed revenue cap. We're not a Medicaid expansion state. Some states are using Medicaid now to pay for the housing for homeless because housing is health care for those that are on the streets. We don't have any general local dollars in our city to put into homelessness either. So having sustainable annual funding is really important.
That's one thing we have.
And that's one thing you have. You're right.
Southwest
You're right.
Washington.
It's amazing. So many cities I talk to, it's hard for people to see is that responding to homelessness is a core service for cities and counties now. It didn't have to used to be. But because of the housing crisis, it is now. So just like making sure the toilets are flushing and the water is running and the trash is being picked up from the streets, those are core services. So is responding to homelessness. Now the other big issue, which is one that every city is dealing with, is having enough affordable housing to put people in. Okay? If housing is the answer to homelessness and you don't have that housing, then how can you solve homelessness? But the reality is that there are ways. It's a bulldog approach. You cannot wave that white flag.
Yeah.
You can say it is difficult, it is hard, but Vancouver can do it.
Yeah.
Because if not Vancouver, then who?
That's right.
Okay? And you guys say, we're better than our neighbors to the south. And we can set the gold standard for our region and for the state. But what it takes is a lot of hard work. And you can work with the private sector, you can find units that are available, you can incentivize those units, you can create teams whose sole job it is to get those units and get landlords to be partners, and the mayor and the county executives can do call to actions to be part of something really special and unique. It's challenging work, but it can be done, and you just can never accept failure, and you've got to bust through those barriers.
And let's end on that. Here is to setting the gold standard right here in Southwest Washington. Marc, thank you so much for joining us here in Clark County. We really appreciate the expertise you've brought to us. And I want to say a special thanks to Council for the Homeless, who played a huge role in bringing Marc here and really leading in our community in this space. Thank you for joining us.